I would routinely see these people talking to kids, and like they would find out that people were 16, and they would keep on making these kinds of jokes.
Just please stop. Go somewhere else and do this.
I have been struggling to actually come up with an argument for why, like, Loli should be banned.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can indeed hear you.
Let's get started. Let's get started with a bang.
Uh-oh. Is that a violent threat?
So I'm assuming you like heard about the Ava Tyson stuff, right?
I have indeed heard about it, yeah.
Okay, cool. So I feel like you might be one of the only people I could talk about this, because I think you're the only people in my personal life that I know that knows anything about Discord or online forums.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I think everyone's kind of given the same take, at least from like the big creators, right? Like, shouldn't be talking sexual with minors. It's really bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's generally not appropriate to be in private conversations having this with them. So we all are in agreement on that. And I think that's where most people kind of start and end. And then some people kind of go a little bit further and they're like, Mr. Beast knew and he's a piece of shit. And then some people are like, this trans person obviously became trans because they want to prey on children. So there's like those extremes. But most of the times people see all this shit and they're like, it's bad what she did, right?
Sure.
Okay. Now, just going beyond that, I don't know if you're going to agree with this, but I feel like what she said and the things that she was doing is, since I discovered Discord 4 or 5 years ago, feels like the most normalized weird shit that I know about online forums. I feel like every time I've entered a Discord or I've seen a Discord flourish, conversations in a lot of the chats will just get weirdly sexual. There will be underage people there, some knowing, some not knowing. So I want to know if you agree with that assessment.
Oh, I thought you were coming here to... I thought we were going to burn our bridge again today.
No, I'll do that on a different day over something that matters to me.
My take is that you probably shouldn't be talking to minor section online. It's probably not a good idea, or making those jokes. But the reality is that for the last like 15, 20 years on the internet, basically everybody online does shit like this. It's like funny when it happens. But when you start divorcing things from context, you start laying out like a whole bunch of them in like a future date, things can look way, way, way more insidious than they actually are.
Wait. When you say people always do stuff like this, what are you referring to? I just want you to be clear.
Like, I'm pretty confident. If anybody wants to try it, because, you know, I love being a file. If you want to try it, I'm pretty sure if you were to go back, do you know Mr. Mooten? Do you ever know him from my stream?
That's the guy who did D&D with you. And he's in
yeah. I'm pretty sure I started gaming with him, I think when he was 16, maybe 15, maybe 17, but I think when he was 16, I guarantee that everybody in our DayZ group and Rush group probably made like groomer pedophile jokes towards him. 1 billion%. I'm sure I did too. I must have. But like, you're in a group, you say shit and you know it's like edgy, but ideally you know that it's not true as well, right? Like, that's kind of the joke. Like, if you were to go back and take like 10 of those jokes and lay them out, and then you would be like, why would you ever say this? It would look fucking horrible. It reminds me of when I got a call from a Slate. I think it was either Slate or The Atlantic. Somebody was working on an article and they were like, hey, so can you talk to me about like these death threats that you made online? I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, you said a lot of like really crazy things while playing games. And I was like, well, yeah, but we all kind of joked around like that. And this lady starts reading me like League of Legends logs. And she's like, okay, well, in here, like, you told this guy that he needs to buy razors from your sponsor and he needs to slit his wrists. And you said, when you said down the highway, not across the street, what did you mean by that? And I'm like, okay, Jesus Christ. Yeah, when you read them out like that, I sound fucking insane, okay? But you got to understand, it's a League of Legends lobby, okay? Yeah. So, not to excuse any of it, but I'm just saying, like, people, like, overhype the fuck out of it, in my opinion, but...
Okay, so I think there's some operative words here that are kind of important. When you say everyone, you'd agree with me that people obviously interact with the internet very differently, even though they might all be on the same platforms, they don't all use it in the same way, right?
Yeah, when I say everyone, I'll be more particular. Back in the day, this was like normalized for internet behavior. Now, there were far fewer people on the internet back then, and it wasn't like as big as it is now with as many different types of communities. Yeah.
So I think the main issue is that this kind of stuff is, one, normal in these spaces, just like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Two, both adults and underage people engage in it. like you can make whatever rules you want in a Discord or in a chat room or in a forum. When I was 14 was part of a bunch of online forums. Not that they were doing stuff with each other necessarily sexually towards each other, but it was just normal to be in adult spaces where people were talking about adult topics. And sometimes people don't mind making those jokes knowing that there's a bunch of underage people in there. And that was probably the weirdest revelation to me, because before Discord, I'd never been like actual chat rooms where people talk. It was forums, so you made posts.
Yeah.
And people would reply to your posts. It's a different vibe. Once I joined Discord during the pandemic, like I would routinely see these people talking to kids, and like they would find out that people were 16, and they would keep on making these kinds of jokes. So I'm asking you, what do you think it is about them that they first feel the need to get online and be hypersexual all the time, even if they're adults or whatever, and B, why do you think they don't care when they find out the person is underage? Because I don't want to believe I don't believe all these people are like pedos or whatever. That's not a reasonable assumption. But I also will say that there definitely have been people who have been in these spaces and have tried to prey on young people. So with that in mind,
So there's like, this is where I would say I would have to see the comments. Personally, I would say that if you're in a room, I think that when people try to make, like, let me think of this. Okay. I'm going to qualify a lot. And I'm going to say I'm not actually part of a lot of Discord stuff. Discord communities, in my opinion, are more weird than communities in the past. So I can't speak to all the Discord stuff. I think that there are groups of people, especially when it comes to men, especially when it comes to young men, where there are a lot of like hypersexualized gay jokes that just happen all the time. I went to an all boys high school. Okay. This type of shit was just like ubiquitous. And then that carried over. I wouldn't say carry over, but that was true in online areas as well. However, I think there's a big difference between people making jokes like that versus people that are half sincerely, half jokingly, like probing sexual conversations like ever. But I think I would have to see the conversation to have a strong opinion about it. Like, let's say that there were adults and minors sharing a Discord room, and like some kid steps in and, you know, he's like, oh, blah, blah, whatever, you know, and then like some guy was like, oh, hey, you know, oh, what's up? Like, I f***ed your mom today or something, you know, some shit like that. Like, it's a sexual joke. It's like, whatever. But let's say there's like a minor in a room and somebody's like, oh yeah, like, don't you have a girlfriend now? Like, are you guys f***ing yet? Like, do you guys like go down on each other? And they're talking to like a 15-year-old kid. I'd be like, that's really fucking weird and insanely inappropriate. Like, there's not a joke there. And even if you're making jokes about it, like the content of what you're talking about, you're like probing this like child's sexual life is really fucking strange, assuming the other person is an adult.
okay, so
yeah,
what about
yeah.
the middle ground? Rather than probing the underage person, this is something I see a lot. They'll just talk very sexually to each other. They're like, oh, can't wait to come over there and suck on your toes. They'll say like weird shit, just super casually to each other, and there'll be an underage person. I feel like that is distinctly different than trying to probe into it, but I still feel like it's incredibly inappropriate.
Yeah, in my
Where do you
opinion,
think that ranks?
I think that all I might be aging out here. I think that all the rooms like that, I think are just fucking weird. When I understand like the heavy sexualized, I even say sexualized, like joking that can happen sometimes in groups. But when people are just like blatantly talking about like sex and stuff like that constantly in Discord rooms, people like that always come off to me as like either losers or degenerates, like almost every time. They're always like, they have like 52 different like identifiers in their profile. They're furry. They talk about their sex life way too much. It's like literally their entire identity. They're probably posting collections of like toys or BDSM outfits. Like that shit is just real. Like that's their whole identity. I think that's really fucking weird. Yeah. But I would think that's weird even if there weren't minors in there. I think all those people are kind of weird when they make their whole identity about that. But then, yeah, it gets even more weird when there are minors in there. Or not weird, I should say inappropriate.
Think it's a bit odd when in person or in real life you're like not this way at all. Then you get online and you're hypersexual 24/7. To me, that incongruence always strikes me as a bit weird. It makes me uncomfortable. And as someone who's probably a little bit more sexual than a lot of these people in real life, I just feel like, why do you get online and feel the need to talk in this way that you would never? You're not sucking on nobody's toes. Stop acting like you're this freaky person, but you get online, you do this. To me, there's like something very bizarre about it. And even though I did enjoy some Discord spaces, that was one part of it that I never really understood of why I picked up on. And to me, it feels like what you said. They're probably like a bit loserish in real life if they feel the need to talk like this online. But that is distinctly different than necessarily pedophilic intentions. But it doesn't change the fact that anyone on the outside looking in, it's going to be impossible for them to tell the difference. You know,
Yeah.
like, and this is something I had to kind of contend with because like I said before, everybody uses the internet in different ways, but we're all interacting with some of the same stuff. Meaning, when Ava's message comes up, the fucking Reddit lurker mod will see it and be like, "Oh, banter," and then everyone else will look at it like, "No, this is an inappropriate conversation to have with a minor," and they're both technically right. But I would still probably side with the normie on this because this shouldn't be something that's even allowed online, even if the intentions are bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think it also depends too when we say things like when we say inappropriate. Like for instance, is it appropriate for like a minor to like say slurs? Like probably not. It's probably not appropriate. But when people say inappropriate when it comes to stuff like this, in their mind, inappropriate is immediately linked to like child rapist. So like there are definitely jokes and stuff that are inappropriate that people probably shouldn't be doing. But then I think sometimes people take the moral condemnation and they go way, way, way too far. Where it's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be joking like this. It's probably not okay. But it doesn't mean the person's like a child groomer or a rapist or something as well. You know? Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. I think the issue is we may not know whether or not the person is a child rapist or a groomer, but obviously the people feel like this kind of thing is potentially a precursor. So why even allow it to fester?
Which is fine, yeah. But it still doesn't make the person a it still doesn't make them like a groomer or a child rapist. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good argument that when you normalize that type of conduct, because the really difficult part is when the conduct becomes normalized, now it's impossible to find the people or to see the people more clearly that are behaving inappropriately, right? Because it's all been normalized. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think like if this is normalized, it's only normalized in like very niche online spaces. That's why for everyone else who sees this, they just have a visceral reaction. I don't believe everyone who sees it is having a dishonest reaction. I'm pretty confident if I'd show this to any of my friends who've never interacted with Discord or online spaces ever, they'd be like, "Yo, this person's probably a rapist." And I could understand they've never seen it. I was actually really jarred when I first saw some of it, but I had also been a little bit stunted because of like my times on forums, so it was manageable. Mm-hmm. But anybody else who sees it, they're going to see those chat logs. They're going to think the worst. And are they unreasonable for thinking that?
Are they unreasonable? Maybe not. I guess probably not. I mean, if you see a collection, like I said, like any types of chat logs, I don't think it's unreasonable to come to a quick feeling about it. Yeah, especially for online shit. Yeah.
Do you guys ever have those issues in your Discord spaces?
Yeah, I think I banned all the people sexting or hooking up with each other or whatever because it just gets insanely fucking degenerate like way too quickly, and then people start accusing everybody of rape and all sorts of autistic shit. I think we had this issue, what was it, was this like 7 or 8 or 9 years ago, and I think we ended up banning it in all of our Discord servers. Like just no more public sexual bullshit because you guys just get too weird with it. You're autistic and retarded, and most of you are literally autistic and you can't handle any of this, so go do it in other servers and rape each other there because it's not going to happen in my shit because I don't want to moderate it. So I'm pretty sure we banned all of that, I think.
Damn, I like that we didn't even have the discussion. We both came to the same conclusion. I banned it in my Discord.
Yeah, it's retarded because nobody can handle any of it, and then it just gets way too fucking weird and stupid. And it's also weird to like step into rooms and and not to be weird or not to be a wokey. It's also like really off-putting to women that like you step into a room and there's like a bunch of weird people like talking about like f***ing and sex and porn and like, oh my god, like today I did this with my cock and like, oh my ooh, and it's like just please stop. Go somewhere else and do this. I don't need to see this like all the time. Yeah, that's why I banned porn in my DGG chat. It's just weird to see people like posting porn and like talking. It was like, why? Just go do this somewhere else.
We definitely agree. Did you have any other thoughts on the Ava Kris Tyson coverage? I feel like, I wanted to ask you that first, and then I'll go.
I feel like, I mean, it's like the dream scenario I think for conservatives, where conservatives are just trying to find like a trans groomer person. And now they finally got like kind of a little bit of their story. Well, I'm still not fully convinced that Ava was involved in any like crazy grooming shit. It just seems like they joked inappropriately. And I'll say that when they were a male and identified as a man, nobody seemed to give a fuck. But yeah, I mean, otherwise, I don't know. I don't have very strong opinions about it. It seemed like inappropriate stuff, but it didn't seem like anything beyond the pale or anything.
Yeah, I think Mr. Beast, letting her go, and then that was definitely the right choice. I will say, like the whole divorce arc that everyone lost their minds over. Did you see that thing unfold?
What is the divorce arc?
Where she became trans and divorced her ex-wife.
I didn't follow any of that. No, I know that a lot of people had a really, really, really strong opinions about it, but
yeah, okay. I think that pretty much covers most of it then.
I do think that there is, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I mentioned on stream, there's a huge issue with people becoming more online today, in that in the past, it was a pretty accurate heuristic that anytime you had like a 25-year-old talking to like a 16-year-old, something very, very, very wrong was happening because our spaces in real life were fairly segregated, except for maybe your job. For like a 25-year-old to go talk to a 15-year-old, there's a lot of things that that 25-year-old has to do that he probably shouldn't be doing. He's either going to high schools or he's going to areas that he shouldn't be in, and he's associating with really young people. But now on the internet, everybody's kind of like thrown into the same space, and those heuristics don't work as much anymore to figure out like who's weird and like intentionally being weird versus who's not. And I think we have a very poor understanding or concept of like consent or like what's appropriate or inappropriate or like what is grooming or not grooming. And so now like we try to use the old heuristics and we're trying to like apply them broadly to online spaces, and it doesn't really work. And I think people need to have a bit more of a sophisticated understanding of different concepts related to like humor or sexuality. But
Yeah, I think also involving anonymity, it's kind of weird because I'll be in online spaces, you'll talk to people on a regular basis. You come to find out one of the users are underage, like, Speed 77, and just like this avatar of like Sonic or something. And like, oh, this person's 17, okay, that's weird. They've always talked like an adult, and then another person comes out and says they're 26. So you don't have any perception to really attach to the person who's saying all these weird things. Whereas in real life, obviously, if you're talking to an underage person, it's generally pretty clear to you for the most part. So the visceral reaction is there. Whereas online, it's something that you kind of have to code backwards.
Yeah.
You have the interactions, you're talking, then you have to go backwards and then reassess everything and try to superpose an image of some 16, 17-year-old on this random user. But it's just it doesn't feel real. All of it's weird and bizarre, which is why I kind of have to just make hard lines. Like anyone under age 18 gets banned. Anyone talking sexually gets banned because like you just don't know who's involved. But it doesn't. At the same time, it doesn't feel as intense, even if we were expected to have an intense reaction to underage stuff or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I 1,000,000,000% agree, right? Like if you meet an 18-year-old or a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old in real life, like it's very, very, very obvious very quickly. But online, it's easy to just kind of like everybody just seems kind of the same. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but one of the funniest experiences to me is I'll be chatting with a girl who's 12 years, no, I'm just kidding. I'll be chatting with somebody who's like British for like 2 months on Discord, and then maybe like finally we have a conversation, and hearing them speak and hearing the British accent, I'm like, Jesus, like every time you type, I read it in American. Like the fact that you have such a heavy accent is actually mind-fucking me really hard right now. I feel like, when it comes to just like text conversations, you're just reading stuff. It's like, it's very easy to just see everything in a particular way. That's a lot different than if you were seeing or interacting with a person in real life,
Yeah. Do you think a lot of the online problems would be solved if anonymity was removed?
I'm not a good person. We're not good people to talk to about that. Or maybe you are. I'm because I'm like an online like little e-celeb or whatever. I hate anonymity. All of that anonymity bullshit. I think it should all go away. But I mean, obviously that would super benefit me and be super detrimental to my haters. So
wouldn't it also be good for public discourse?
Yeah, I think I legitimately think that the United States government should create a sign-on server where you can OAuth into apps, and like apps can decide if do you have like a U.S. Social Security verified whatever login, and then that's how they verify your identity. Like boom, I think that should be the case. I think there should be a social media platform that offers that. I want to see who I'm talking to. I want to make sure that I'm talking actually to Julia and not Natasha. Or I'm talking to, like David and not Dimitri. And yeah, I fully am 1,000,000,000% on board with that. I would support it 100%. Yeah. But I don't think the average internet user would be okay with that.
Yeah. I remember learning about this, but in South Korea, in order to have like a gaming account, you have to use your actual ID. So all your gaming stuff is linked. And if you have bad behavior online, it's possible to get permabanned off of specific games.
Yeah.
And you won't be able to get another account because of that. Now, there is some workaround, but it's incredibly difficult. And even just that barrier to entry kind of makes people act a little bit differently. So I could see ways in which it's very positive for a lot of realms. On the other hand, with certain lines of employment, maybe you're persecuted for things that you're saying online that probably shouldn't be persecuted for. And I guess in those kind of circumstances, anonymity would be something that people want. But yeah, actually, you know what? Why don't you make the case against?
Oh yeah, I mean, you just did it. Like the case against, now it's going to be incredible. It would be, theoretically, if it wasn't implemented well, it'd be incredibly easy to track your online stuff. People could be doxing you and holding you accountable for your stuff online so much easier. It would all be all the standard arguments. Then the counter arguments would obviously be, well, just because you OAuth in with your real information doesn't mean that the social media platform has to reveal your real information. And I mean, you could, I don't know. I think it could be managed, but it'll never happen. So.
Yeah, I just question. Well, I mean, I don't know. I have a hard time because on Facebook it feels like people use their real name, their real photos, and they just say the most wild stuff. So I don't even know if it really helped with public discourse that much.
Yeah,
You would think, but when I go to Facebook, I just don't think that's the case. I think people feel very comfortable saying the most nutty shit online, and they don't care.
Yeah, but at least on Facebook, you generally know the real people at least.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. I do think Facebook users are more brave than YouTube chatters and anything else I've seen because they when an ugly ass person is using their real pictures to tell you you're ugly, that's a crazy level of bravery or stupidity that I don't see on any other platform.
For sure, yeah.
All right, that's it for me, boss. Oh yeah, I was just saying, yeah. I've received hundreds of demands to disavow you, and I always appreciate every time I get them.
Well, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, peace, boss.
Have fun. Be careful. All
Hey, dude.
right, what's up?
So you know that Ava Kris stuff that's been going around?
Yeah.
Yeah. I ended up having a bit of a debate with my own chat over some of the stuff, particularly like the Loli content crap.
Okay.
I have been struggling to actually come up with an argument for why like Loli should be banned. And to be more specific, like depictions of children, because there's Loli content that's, like technically legal Loli. It's adults that just look short and cute. I'm talking about like sexual depictions of children,
Okay.
but in artwork. The only argument that I've been able to come up with is it could constitute hate speech, where you're promoting violence against a protected group, in this case, children. The United States doesn't have hate speech laws. They do have things like disturbance of peace, crap like that, but only like Canada, Europe, and crap have hate speech laws. But what do you like? I can't think of an argument for banning Loli content, but not also it resulting in a ban on other kinds of violent or obscene artwork.
Yeah, no, I don't think in the United States, I don't think we should be banning artistic depictions of anything. I don't like that argument for the United States. I don't know about Europe, but in the US, no, I don't think so. I think that's too far.
So are you are like, do you believe hate speech is having a ban on hate speech is a bad thing?
Legally? Yes, I don't think that legally the United States should be banning
Really?
hate speech. Yeah. In the US, at least. I can't speak to how other countries are set up, but
Okay, are you familiar with Canada's hate speech laws?
nope.
Okay, I can give you a basic rundown. I'm sure you could research it more on your free on your free time, but basically, it's any speech that promotes violence against protected groups. So that would be minorities, black people, Asians, Jews, gays, trans, stuff like that. So if you were to say something like, Jews are evil and they're trying to take over the world, that could conceivably promote violence against that protected group. And similarly, if you said like all trans people or gay people are pedophiles, same kind of thing. That would be banned under Canada's hate speech laws, and you could get prosecuted in different ways, like fine, if you don't pay a fine, certain amount of imprisonment, crap like that. The only defense you can have against hate speech was that the speech you were saying wasn't actually hateful and wasn't intended to promote violence. Two, it's actually factual. So if you say anything that can be provably true, so let's say if you said something, 50% of crime is caused by black people, you might get charged with hate speech, but if you could prove that's actually a provable fact, then that wouldn't be hate speech. And stupidly, if you're part of a religious group, that actually protects you against hate speech prosecution. So if you could prove that it's an aspect of your religious belief, then you can't be prosecuted under hate speech. So if you said Jews are the scum of the earth, and then you said, well, I'm Muslim, and it says right here that like Jews need to be eradicated in the Quran, then that would protect you. I don't know why they have that provision, but
Okay, wait, what
do
is
you
the
have-
point? What about, yeah.
Yeah, so my point is, Do you have any particular issue with that?
Fuck, I'm sorry. Could you just re-summarize what you just said? That there's provisions where if you do hate speech and it leads to harm or it can lead to harm, it should be illegal or something? I'm so sorry.
So, hate speech is specifically any kind of speech that promotes violence against a protected class of people.
Sure. I think that definition seems like it would be overly broad. I'd be worried about that.
So it's basically the same thing as if it's essentially the same idea behind disturbance of the peace. So if you yell fire in a crowded theater, same kind of idea.
I think that
if
in
what
that,
you're
I think
saying
I
could
like that
reasonably-
because that's like a very clear in time, like you're saying something and it's designed to produce a particular negative thing immediately. Then I think that's bad. So like incitement crimes where somebody is saying something with the intention of inciting people to lawless activity or unlawful activity. I think that's fine to make that illegal. But just like hate speech in general, I don't think, even if you could say that it might lead to, I'm just not comfortable with that.
Well, I mean, especially for specific cases, like with Jews, for instance, if you heard a Nazi talking about how the Holocaust never happened, the Jews made it up so that they could control the world, and they're trying to turn your kids gay, and they're trying to destroy all of society, and they're killing you with microplastics. Like, that's something that could conceivably and realistically lead to actual violence against that sort of group.
Yeah, I could, but I think that's political speech. I think you have a right to have that, to say that if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. If you were in Germany before the Nazis took over, and we're talking about after Hitler was freed from prison, I think there was a 2-year period where he wasn't allowed to speak publicly or write for his newspaper. You would have allowed him to speak publicly and write for his newspaper about how, like, Jews are evil?
God damn. Oh my God. I think in the United States I would. I can't speak to Germany, but yeah, in the U.S., I think you should be allowed to.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how that would make a difference.
Well, because different countries might have whole different constitutions or values or things. But yeah, for my country, I would say, they wanted to publish it. I think that those are important rights to be able to speak freely.
So, I mean, if you literally saw somebody who had the exact same political beliefs as Hitler, and you saw a similar kind of uprising of, fascist ideology, particularly targeted against Jews, you'd be okay with them speaking publicly.
Yes. As long as it didn't qualify for like a direct incitement to violence. Like they weren't saying, we're going to go kill these Jews here right now or something. Yes.
I don't know why that would matter. Like we already have historical precedent on like what actually happened.
Because then I think what happens is you end up chilling a whole bunch of political speech that becomes, your laws become very broad. And what you can criminalize as speech, I think, becomes very dangerous. I think it's not good.
So I would say no. I don't know how, banning somebody from saying the Holocaust never happened would chill any kind of valid political discussion.
What about somebody saying that I think that kids below the age of 18 should have access to trans health care? And people say this is causing the killing of children.
If you're advocating for access to trans health care.
Yeah.
And somebody says that is killing trans kids.
Yeah, that you're causing people to do mutilation, self-mutilation, self-harm, yeah.
I don't think under Canada's laws that would actually constitute as hate speech because there's nothing about that speech that is meant to actually incite hate.
Well, how do you know that? Conservatives say that they're trying to kill our kids. They're trying to poison our kids. They're trying to make it so we can't reproduce anymore for incoming invaders.
The point is, they're not. The point is, hate speech is an incitement of violence towards a targeted group.
Yeah, and they would say
So
that
if you
trans
were to
speech
have-
is an incitement of violence towards children. That's what usually conservatives argue. That's how they argue for all the book bannings and shit in schools, right?
Right. The problem is, if I were to say, if we allow trans kids to transition, that's going to cause them harm. or it's going to, I don't know, make them commit suicide, or it's mutilating them or something, that type of speech isn't meant to incite violence towards that targeted group.
But do you understand that
you
you're
could say
exercising
there's a bit of
your own
gaslighting.
personal opinion on this, but other people are going to have an opinion that disagrees, right? So that the issue is,
Right,
do you want
and I mean-
do you want a court deciding what type of speech is allowed or isn't allowed when it's just like political speech that could down the road lead to violence?
Well, the argument from the trans community would be that it is causing violence towards trans people because they're not allowed to actually get necessary medical care.
Yeah, but then the argument from conservatives would be
but
it's not necessary medical care. It's just you're brainwashing children and mutilating them.
Right, but from a legal perspective, if we use the definition of hate speech that's used in Canada, that wouldn't. There's no reasonable expectation that saying we should bar trans care to minors. There's no reasonable expectation that would encourage somebody to say shoot up a school because there's a trans kid in there.
Okay, I disagree. I think that
That's
depending on
the
where your
point.
conservatives are at, I think they absolutely could come to that.
Well, there certainly is hate speech against trans people that would constitute hate speech. So calling all trans people or LGBTQ members groomers, that is something that would constitute as hate speech in the Canadian Constitution.
What about calling all conservatives Nazis?
That probably wouldn't, because again, if we were to like, there's another provision in the Canadian Constitution that protects comedic or hyperbolic speach. So if you were
but then
to
they're going to say
explain-
the same thing about trans people being groomers, no?
Probably not. You would have a much harder. You'd have a much more difficult time saying that's hyperbole.
Why?
Well, when you see what they're writing and the way they're writing it, it just seems to have a much more serious tone behind it. The way they react to posts like Ava Kris Tyson, like just look at their reactions behind some of the accusations that have come out. Like they're saying all trans people are groomers. We have to like eliminate trans ideology from the planet.
What are people saying? Like we've got like Nazis. Everybody needs to punch a Nazi. Like look at all these Nazis. We have to get rid of them, like we did in World War II. Like we actually America did like go and kill a bunch of Nazis, right?
Right. Yeah. Nazis aren't a protected class, though.
Okay.
But if you call, like, I'd say, like an advocate for, because the groomer accusation doesn't just go to LGBT people, right? It goes to teachers who are cis and straight who, like,
Yeah.
teach these things to kids, right? It's like anyone who's pro-trans is like a groomer to these people, right?
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
sure James Lindsay just says, okay, groomer in response to fucking everyone. Yeah. But is that like, hate
Right.
speech or
But
should that be illegal? Yeah.
right. But the whatchamacall. I haven't seen this have a political chilling effect in any country that has any sort of sensible hate speech laws, like Canada. So like we could argue a bit of these like weird finer points about whether or not calling like a pro-trans person or a pro-LGBT person a groomer, whether that constitutes hate speech. I haven't really seen this come up in Canada yet, where there's like a criminal trial for somebody saying this on Twitter. So I just don't see this having an actual chilling effect. And again, we know that hate speech does lead to, you know, circumstances like Nazi Germany. So I don't know why you wouldn't be in favor of banning certain forms of speech.
I
Hold
would-
on, I'm about
I
to
would
make
push
the.
back
This is about to be
against
the
the-
sickest fucking guess in the world. I'm so sorry. Hold on, real quick, 1 sec. 2007. Let's fucking go. World's End. I'm an actual god at this. I've transformed into a fucking god. I've transformed into a god. I'm so sorry. Okay, continue. Go ahead.
I would push back against the idea that it was like a permissiveness of speech that got the Nazis into power. Definitely not over like, especially in terms of anti-Semitism, because you mentioned Hitler was banned from speaking until it was 1927. But the Weimar Republic did have censorship laws. They weren't very good. They were massively politicized. But like Der Stürmer was confiscated or taken to court like dozens of times. People were sentenced to jail actually for anti-Semitism or for like advocating for violence. Like Stryker, the guy who ran Der Stürmer, like he was jailed. There were lots of litigations brought up against these people and prosecutions. But the problem is that when Hitler started to gain popularity, it was around the period of the Great Depression when he had actually very tactically put anti-Semitism at the background of his advocacy because he was trying to appeal to like center-right people who were scared of fucking communism and shit. So like he was trying to appeal to people who didn't see anti-Semitism as like a top priority. I just feel like if you're talking about suppressing people like Hitler or in any historical example, the problem is that it's not really their speech or their hatefulness that I think is the thing that needs to be quelled. It's things that they actually do. So with Hitler, the opportunity was not missed at anti-Semitic newspapers or things like that. The opportunity was missed because he tried to coup the government and got away with it, right? And then justified
Right.
himself with a 4-hour opening statement at the fucking court. Whereas by the standards of that time, they would have he should have just been executed by the standards of
Yeah.
1920s. So I feel like long before the Nazis had like 1% of the vote, there were plenty of opportunities to keep him out of office and out of power forever, but they obviously just didn't take it. I don't think his right to speak though was really like
Well, the thing
really
is,
good part of
if Nazi Germany had a strong constitution where that sort of hate speech wouldn't be allowed, like the Nazi Party just fundamentally wouldn't have I don't see it really fundamentally being able to exist unless they completely eliminated all of their anti-Semitic bullshit from their political positions.
But they kind of did in a way. So they never got rid of anti-Semitism, but from
Yeah,
28
I know
onwards,
they
yeah,
kind of quieted it down.
because their whole thing was like some of these speeches were just like, yeah, it was like fear of communism. Like we're not going to get taken over by communists and shit like that. And
Yeah.
also appealing to like the anxieties of
Well,
the depression.
by the way, a
and
lot of that
law and
also had to do
order.
with
Yeah.
anti-Semitism. A big reason for why they were going after these communists was because of the Jewish thing.
Yeah, well, it was because of the Jewish thing, but they didn't need to say that because the reason
Yeah.
most people hated communists was because they were violent, not because they were
Be right back, one second.
thought they were
Right,
Jewish.
but I mean, if there was a constitution in place that would not permit hate speech, when they took power, they wouldn't have been able to do a lot of the things they did. Like Hitler would have been pretty much immediately impeached, and they'd have to call for new elections.
because he'd have to get impeached for hate speech when he was in power.
Right.
Well,
Which, because of I understand it wasn't a democracy, but we have the luxury of living in a democracy, and we could take advantage of that by having hate speech laws in the Constitution that would prevent such a thing.
yeah, because I think the problem was and maybe this is like I don't know if this could ever happen in Canada or like in a more modern society, but I guess the problem was that a lot of the laws that were used to suppress hateful outlets like Der Stürmer and people like Stryker was those same laws were also utilized when the Nazis took over, right? Because it made it very easy to just ban outlets when you thought that they were threatening, like not just minorities, but also like public safety and things like that. So I don't know, but that's why I always wonder with Canada, because I don't know that much about Canada's hate speech laws, but I feel like it's quite difficult to have a world where people who use the groomer thing, like they get done for hate speech, but people who call conservatives like Nazis or cancer or scum or vermin, it's all hyperbole. You know, like I feel like I don't know how you disconnect that from people's political leanings. You know, because people always hear incitement louder when it's against them, and they go a little bit ambiguous when it's against someone else.
Well, again, things like like Nazis, they're not a protected class. So you usually, I think, not even usually, just always, you see these hate speech laws coming into effect when it's against protected classes. So like women, gay, trans people, black people, crap like that. I haven't seen this have any kind of political chilling effect where if you were to call a political figure like Donald Trump a Nazi, you end up getting arrested and you know you're being told, okay, well, this is promoting political violence. That just hasn't happened. And Canada is also a little unique compared to the UK and other countries because we actually have free speech in our constitution. It's just that hate speech isn't protected under free speech, whereas in the UK, and I have seen this actually be a problem in the UK, because you don't have any free speech in your constitution, and there are restrictions not only on hate speech, but also obscene speech and obscene language. I have seen that result in political dissidents being imprisoned for basically no reason other than having a political opinion.
Yeah, because that's the one that Count Dankula got fucked over by. It had nothing to do
Yeah.
with hate speech. It was to do with obscenity or
Yeah.
grossly offensive material. But for our hate speech laws are, I don't know how it is for you, but for our hate speech laws, the reason I do the Nazi comparison is because the hate speech laws that we have in the UK, like stirring up hatred, is in a way that the speech violation has to be criminal anyway. Like it has to be a form of incitement or like a very high threshold, which is why very few people get done for it. The hate is just the motive. So
Well,
when we see someone who's
similar
done
in
for
Canada.
Yeah, so for us, like with that crime of stirring up hatred, which sounds very ambiguous and loose, like the people who get done for that are people who would have been done for incitement anyway. Like I think the number of convictions we get is like less than 10 or 20 a year. That's very, very rare that people get done for that. Is it the same in Canada?
Pretty much, yeah. I think in the UK it's illegal to deny the Holocaust. In Canada, if you were to deny the Holocaust, you can also be criminally charged with that. So you can just casually say the Holocaust never happened and then get charged with hate speech.
I don't know if you can do it in the UK. I don't think that's true. I think in Germany it is, but
yeah, I know in Germany it is. I think there's other countries in Europe. I'm pretty sure in the UK.
No,
I could be
there's a
wrong. I'm
petition
not
for it
from
in
there,
2021 saying that they should make it illegal. So I don't think it's been changed since then.
In the US, I don't know if this is considered an aggravating factor. I don't think that's the right term, but I know that for what you're saying about how the hateful speech is speech that's already illegal, that's kind of how it works in the US, where we have like quote unquote hate crimes, where if you kill somebody or you assault somebody, like it's already a crime, but then if they find out you did it because of a racial motivation, now you can add that on.
It's another aggravating factor.
Yeah. But it's not hateful in and of itself. Like you can't just criminalize hateful behavior. It's only if it's already a crime. That could be like a thing that you add on or something. Yeah.
But that's why I felt like when you were saying hate speech, it sounded like hateful rhetoric that maybe doesn't cross like a criminal threshold should come under it as well.
So what I mean by hate speech, and again, you can look up the Canadian definition of hate speech. It's any kind of speech that is targeted towards a protected group where you are inciting violence against that group. So clear incitement of violence would be all black people should be enslaved, put in chains because they're subhuman animals. That would be considered a clear incitement of hate and violence. Especially if you were to say we should just go out and like club all the that would clearly be an incitement of violence and would be prosecuted under hate speech. I would say most criminal convictions would fall under that kind of incitement anyway. But the way hate speech is defined in Canada, again, it would be anything that would reasonably be expected to result in violence towards a protected class. So if you were to spread anti-Semitic conspiracy theories talking about how Jews are trying to kill and poison us all by putting microplastics in the water, and they've also rolled out this vaccine to like sterilize and make your kids gay, and they're trying to crash the economy to make us all poor, and they're actually all Satanists. Those sorts of conspiracy theories, if you would convince somebody of them, you would expect an individual to rationally come to the conclusion that they should actually commit violence against that group of people, because they being convinced that they're committing violence against them.
Yeah, it just depends on what the threshold would be in that case then, because I know that in the UK, when the reason the number of convictions is so low is because, that speech does have to be an insanely high threshold. So, like, maybe if someone said what you said, but it was like over a series of tweets for a while, they probably wouldn't get like criminally charged for it. But if there's someone who gives like a very inflammatory speech about Muslims in the middle of the street in front of a crowd and says like, and uses very violent rhetoric and says like, and points to like the Muslim community that's like 20 minutes away, and then there's a riot afterwards, then that's like a better example. But it sounds like when you mentioned Holocaust denial, for example, like it sounds like you want to include that into like a reasonable person would be expected in that to incite violence. Is that what you were saying earlier?
Because Holocaust denialism is connected with all of these other conspiracy theories against Jews, I would say it's totally reasonable to include Holocaust denialism under hate speech, and a type of speech that could incite violence towards a certain group.
So someone goes on Twitter and starts concern trolling about the wooden doors. That's like a crime.
I'm not familiar with the wooden doors thing.
Oh, there's a theory, something about like, you ever heard Nazis say that the fucking the original doors for the gas chambers were wood? So why would they be gassing people with wooden doors? Because gas can get through the doors.
Okay.
Yeah, it's bullshit, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that would. I don't think that would cross that threshold. If you were to say something like only 200,000 Jews at most were killed, not 6 million, that would definitely cross that threshold.
So if someone lies about the numbers, that's enough to be a criminal?
I believe so.
Would that be more or less? Is that the case in Canada? That's definitely the case in the UK, because obviously that wouldn't be seen as incitement. But
yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm not a legal expert, but I'm pretty sure. And I'm all in favor of that. I don't know why these people should be able to walk around saying the stupid shit.
Because I'm trying to think of all the kinds of harmful disinformation that there is right now, and how many people you would have to be prosecuting to enforce that like, clearly. Because like that means anti-vaxxers, they spread disinformation that gets people killed, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I wouldn't necessarily be against that either. Like there has to be something done about this retarded misinformation. And I think things like Holocaust denialism is not something that you want rampant in society. I think that would objectively make society much worse if you have a large portion of the population, especially a majority, who think either no Jews died or it was only a few thousand. I don't want to live in a society like that, and I think there should be laws protecting certain societal standards when it comes to truth and information. I don't think we've crossed a threshold yet. I think we might be close to where vaccine misinformation should be kind of legally prosecuted. By the way, we used to do this. Back in the...
Okay, wait. I believe you.
Back in the 1800s.
Yep, I believe it happened. I disagree with it now. Okay, we've got the argument. Anything else?
No, not really.